sports nutritionist or a person specializing in dietetics and sports nutrition. And here are some of the key issues to think about. So if you're looking to get a bachelor's degree in nutrition, the first thing to do is check the requirements at your university or the university at which you may be applying for anyone who may not be at a university right now. And most of these requirements include inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, biology, biochemistry, anatomy and physiology, and nutrition core courses. And of these, especially if you're already an exercise science major, biochemistry is often one that is not required by exercise science. So be sure that that gets into your program somehow, should you be able to fit that in. If you're deciding to get a master's degree in nutrition, you will first need to take some prerequisites if you have a non-science bachelor's degree. And sometimes people will accept you provisionally while you take courses at their university, and then will accept you full into their program after you take these courses. If you have a master's in exercise science, you will more than likely have all the prerequisites, except, as I said earlier, for biochemistry. And even if you have a number of courses to take, it is worth getting your master's degree and not a second bachelor's degree. That's my opinion. However, I do think that although it might take you a little longer to get your master's degree if you don't have all the required prerequisites, at least you will come out with a second degree and a higher degree. Also be sure that the university to which you will be applying or attending is accredited by the American Dietetic Association. After you either obtain your bachelor's or master's in nutrition, if you wanted to become a registered dietitian, and I would recommend that because, again, that gives you another door to open. To become a registered dietitian, you have to apply to a dietetic internship. And the dietetic internships are competitive. They're throughout the United States. Some are full-time, some are part-time, some offer a master's degree with their program, but they require a minimum of 900 hours. And they are, as I said, competitive. And typically you pay to go to these internship programs. And the required rotations within these internship programs are clinical nutrition, community nutrition, and food service. And the reason why they have these rotations is after you're done your dietetic internship, you then are ready to sit for the board exam for your registered dietitian. And the board exam encompasses these three main areas. A lot of times my students will say, but you know, Dr. Volpe, I want to be a sports dietitian or a sports nutritionist. I don't really want to deal with food service. My response is, although a lot of these might not be directly related to sports nutrition, for example, if you are a sports nutritionist for a professional football team or whomever, you do need to deal with food service. Or, for example, you have athletes who have diabetes, clinical nutrition will become very important. Once you finish your internship, as I said, you can sit for the RD exam, the Registered Dietitian exam, and once you pass, you need to maintain 75 continuing education credits every 5 years. The American Dietetic Association has what's called a Professional Development Portfolio. And that Professional Development Portfolio allows you to set goals for your 5 years, and every 5 years you must complete many forms that are actually all online at this point, and that allows you to basically state, yes, I met my goals, I achieved the credits, but the idea for this is why the American Dietetic Association chose to go this route is people then can focus in areas, for example, of sports nutrition or clinical nutrition, etc. Some people, when they think about sports nutrition, they think of it in different ways. When I think of it, I think of something like this, that you might get a bachelor's degree in nutrition and minor in exercise science or kinesiology. You might get a bachelor's degree in nutrition and a master's degree in exercise physiology, or you might get a bachelor's degree in exercise science and a master's degree in nutrition. So the combination of them, I think, gives you the strongest background to understand both fields very well and then to be able to apply yourself to the athletes to whom you counsel. I already discussed the American Dietetic Association. They are the main, like American College of Sports Medicine is to exercise science and other areas of sports medicine. The American Dietetic Association is the umbrella association for those who are in nutrition and also who are registered dietitians. not that you must be a registered dietitian to be a member of the American Dietetic Association. But we do have a board-certified specialist in sports dietetics, and in order to sit for that exam, you must have your RD first, and then you can sit for that board exam, and you will have what's called a CSSD. So before I move on, the next part of my talk will just simply take you through my career, and I'm doing this simply because this might give you some ideas. You might totally disagree with the route I went, but I thought this would be a nice segue into then to your questions. So for me, my undergraduate was from the University of Pittsburgh, and at that point I majored in exercise science, even though originally I thought I was going to be a physical therapist. I played field hockey as an undergraduate, and my athletic trainer is the one who told me about this, at that time, what was a new major called exercise science, which I was quite excited about. Then I decided to go on for a Master's of Science at Virginia Tech. I majored in exercise physiology there, and I minored in nutrition. And I went to Virginia Tech because my undergraduate advisor had gotten his master's and PhD from Virginia Tech and told me how much he really liked the program. After I obtained my Master's of Science degree, I went back to Pennsylvania where I was born, and I worked for a year, and I worked in cardiac rehab. Virginia Tech's program at that time emphasized cardiac rehabilitation, and I really wanted to ensure that I got some practice in that field prior to going on to either my MD, my veterinary degree, or my PhD. But then I decided that I'd go back to Virginia Tech for my PhD in nutrition, and those of you who might know Dr. Janet Wahlberg-Rankin, she was my master's advisor and had a very big influence on my life, and her PhD is in nutrition, and I thought, this is a really neat combination. I think I'm going to go this route. And although she was, at that time, their departments were not together, exercise science and nutrition, so I had a different advisor, Dr. Janet Taper, who also had a big influence on my life, and my research there was on bone density in collegiate athletes. And the first job after my doctorate was at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, where I was a visiting assistant professor. It was a one-year position, and there I learned a lot as a rookie. After your doctorate, for those of you who are thinking of getting it, there isn't quite a lot of training, in essence, to tell you how to be a professor. So it was very helpful for me to have that year. But then I knew that I needed to do a post-doctoral fellowship. It was always on my mind, and therefore I applied to two different places. I applied to Northwestern University Medical School and University of California at Berkeley. And I chose Berkeley because of the areas of research were more mineral metabolism, as my doctoral work had been with boron and bone mineral density. And I worked on energy expenditure research and zinc metabolism during and post-exercise. And that was a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship. And for those of you who may not know, postdoctoral fellowships are parallel to an MD doing his or her residency, where we, as PhDs, focus on our research solely. So we're not students and we're not professors. We are postdoctoral fellows. Then I did get a full-time job at the University of Massachusetts after my postdoc as an assistant professor, which that's the level that you start. It's a rank. I did not have a lot of guidance, but I found a lot of support from women in my field, and those include people like Dr. Priscilla Clarkson, and of course Dr. Rankin and Dr. Taper and Dr. Janet King, who was my postdoc advisor, all forever will be my mentors. And so there are many people along the way, Dr. Patty Friedson, many others who I know I'm not naming, men and women who all mentored me. And I did get tenure and became an associate professor, and I still get a lot of support from women in my field. And at the same time, again, all along the road you'll have mentors. And I always tell my students, whether they're graduate or undergraduate, that whether they like it or not, I'm going to be their mentor for life. So I hope that you can develop a relationship like that with your professors as well. I took the job at the University of Pennsylvania in 2004. I felt this need to have a change, and I was recruited down here in the School of Nursing. I'm not in a nutrition department. We're actually an exercise phys department. We have a nutrition minor. But the reason I chose to come down here is I felt like I needed a new challenge, and it would be better for my research and to have more collaborations. And my research is very much into obesity and diabetes prevention, and they have a very big contingency of individuals who research those areas here at Penn. And I still have more goals, and I think I always tell my students, and I tell myself, to never become complacent, that of course my goal is to become a full professor, and to constantly ask yourself if you're where you want to be, and that if you feel that you need a change in your career, to not be afraid to do that either, because although I love what I do, there are times I think, maybe I should be doing something differently, or at least maybe changing a little bit of what I'm doing with my research, for example. So I have these little things I pull up here, and I know I didn't go through all of them because I knew our time would be slightly limited, and I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for your questions. But initially I thought I'd be a professional athlete, believe it or not, and then I thought I'd be a veterinarian or maybe a physician, but I became a professor, and I'm really glad I did because it's helped me. I really enjoy what I do, and I enjoy the diversity in what I do. I've been able to travel many places that I would not have been able to had I not had this position because of being invited to different places around the world to speak, for example. So some of my final thoughts that are a little bit philosophical, I guess, but I still like to share them, and that is, believe in what you can do and it will happen. When my students say that they want to be a sports nutritionist for a professional team, I say most certainly you can do that. But you typically need to do the steps beforehand before you can get that dream job. Surround yourself with positive people and animals. I didn't talk a lot about the influence of my family and, of course, my dogs, but my family had such a great influence on me. My parents are Italian immigrants and taught me how to work hard for things that I tried to achieve and never to give up. And I'm the youngest of 4, and all of my siblings are athletic and really just we push one another a bit. And I've had dogs my whole life, and I've always learned a lot from them. And learn from your experiences. And I know people tell you that all the time, and sometimes we think, oh my goodness, I failed at something, or I said I was going to get a master's in this and I ended up not. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. Just think about what you can learn from the experiences that you have experienced. And do not compare yourself with others. That's a really tough thing, I think, for humans, for us not to do, but try not to compare yourself to others. Think about the things you like to do, and if you have a big change in your career and it moves you away from this, that it's probably where you're meant to be. And to always have a dream, because I always look through those rose-colored glasses, that we always need to have a dream and go for what we really believe in. And I will end with my 2 dogs. And Heather, that was far faster than I thought it would be. So my apologies to you and perhaps the group, but perhaps that's better for more questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Stella. And like Stella just said, this is a time for all of you who are on the line to ask anything and everything that you would like. We have a great resource here on the phone able to take your questions. So just as a reminder, there are 2 ways to ask questions. The first is to raise your hand using the hand icon on the left side of the toolbar. And if you select this icon, I will unmute your audio line so that you can ask the question via the phone or a headset if you're using a headset. Or you may type your question in the question portion of the toolbar, and I will read it aloud to the group. So just starting with some basic ones that have come in, what are some of the various work settings I can work in as a registered dietitian?
Sure. So some of the work settings you can work in would be in hospital for sure. So at any point in the hospital. It can be inpatient, it can be outpatient, and dietitians can be generalist or they can specialize. There are renal dietitians, there are oncology dietitians, there are diabetes dietitians. So depending on the hospital you're in, you may be a specialist or you may be a generalist. So the hospital would be one. Another place could be places like women, infants, and children, so community programs. And other places actually that my students have had jobs in are in the pharmaceutical industries, in particularly with supplements. So those students of mine who have received master's degrees in nutrition will go on to be junior researchers at places like Wyeth, for example.
Great. We have a question, and I'm going to unmute the phone line. I believe is it Chi? Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Can you go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah. I'm working on my master's degree in nutrition. My background is in exercise physiology, just like you did, and psychology. I have a degree in BS in exercise physiology and psychology, and I'm working on my master's in nutrition coordinator program with Dietetics. My biggest problem is it's not me, it's outside. I try to do it online since I won't be able to find any schools around my area, and if I want to go to physically to go to school to get a degree in master's nutrition, I have to travel at least one way 3 hours, so a total of about 6 hours a day. And so I decided to go for online school, which I think American Dietetic Association accredited just one school out of the whole United States, which is Eastern Michigan University, and I'm taking classes, I'm taking all those prerequisites to be accepted. However, they require me to find preceptors on my own. And the place where I live is so small that I pretty much went every single one of the hospitals, nursing homes, schools, you name them. I can't find them. And all the registered dietitians, they want to help me, but their companies don't allow them to be a preceptor. So my frustration is that I am like full with the gear and ready to do it, but I just can't find anybody around my area. And is there any suggestions that you can make? And then also, why is it so hard to get accepted as an internship, and why is it so competitive?
Sure. I'll answer the last two first. The competitiveness comes because there are only a certain number of slots, yet there are a lot more students who apply. So that's where the difficulty of getting in and the competitiveness comes in. But Chi, your first part of your question, the very first part is you asked what, like, are they asking you to get preceptors for your internship? What are these preceptors for? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, they don't like to call it as an internship since you're not, your school is not providing you to be trained in. So you're not going to one place to do your internship. Let's say like you go to a hospital and you do the whole internship program there. But this one is something that I would, let's say like I find a RD, and then they would agree with me to do the portion of the classes, let's say like clinical. And then I have my preceptor in food service management, and I would have another RD who's doing community service. So like according to classes that you have to be taking, you have to find those RDs or whoever is going to be qualified for doing a preceptor.
Huh. Okay. I guess I'm sorry that I'm still a little confused with that because internships have to be approved. So I'm a little confused with this setup. But I guess what I would say is I wouldn't give up. I might just go ahead and continue to contact some people and maybe even contact someone at the American Dietetic Association in their continuing education department, like go through the continuing ed department, and tell them about your dilemma, and maybe they can direct you to people who might be closer by than you think but you might not know about. That's probably the best advice I could give you as far as trying to find preceptors. It's a shame that the companies aren't allowing the dietitians to do that for you because most dietitians really want to give back to the profession.
Yeah.
So try contacting American Dietetic Association, Continuing Ed Department. So like Heather Turner is to ACSM, I don't know the person at ADA. You can go on their website and see what you can find. And Heather's going to give you guys my, I believe, my email address. Right, Heather?
Yeah, I can do that.
At the end. So if you have more questions, you can certainly email me as well, and I could maybe think of other things too.
Great. We have another question. Can you clarify, do you need a master's degree to sit for your RD?
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. You do not. Some dietetic internships offer a master's degree while you're doing their internships, but you need a bachelor's degree in nutrition from an ADA-accredited university before you can sit, and then do a dietetic internship before you can sit for your RD exam.
Okay. This question is somewhat related. Do you believe it's best to go straight from undergrad to a graduate program, or is it better to get work experience first?
That's a really great question, and one that I find somewhat difficult to answer because I really think that it's so individual. I went straight from my BS to my MS. I probably would have still gone straight through to my PhD, but I decided to work a year in cardiac rehab to also sort of reconsider what I wanted to get my doctorate in. But I really think that that is so individual. So I don't think one way is better or worse. I think it depends on what you're looking to do. And if, for example, you graduate with your degree in either nutrition or exercise science, and you're thinking about, geez, I'm not really sure where I want to go, it might be better for you to decide to work a year or two in either the field you received your BS in or a similar field, and that might help direct you to where you better direct you to where you want to get a master's in.
The next question is, when you think of sports nutrition, you think of working with elite athletes, but what are other types of groups or people that I could work with?
Oh, and gosh, you guys are asking such great questions because I'm surprised I actually didn't say that in my talk, because I always will tell people that sports nutrition is extremely broad. I am still an athlete at the age of 46, and there are many people who are, and I'm competitive, and there are many people who are athletes who I consider athletes who might not be competitive, but they exercise. So when I think of the field of sports nutrition, I think of it as all-encompassing, from the elite athlete to the recreational athlete, and I think of all ages. And so therefore, when you think of that, you realize that that really opens up a great opportunity for individuals who are considering going into the field of sports nutrition, because clearly the jobs in professionals or even college are more difficult to obtain, except I'll come back to that in a second, at least more difficult to obtain initially. And therefore, if you are able to include in your practice, if you have your own practice or if you're working with others, individuals who have varying levels of athleticism, for lack of a better word, I think that will be great for you, and also for the people who are coming to you. I'm getting back to the collegiate point because although I know a good number of people who are collegiate sports dietitians, we as sports nutritionists need to really make a good point that not many universities, many, do not have sports nutritionists, and they need them. And many, if they have them, only have part-time. So again, that's another niche to think about if you're wanting to go toward more elite athletics, but not professional.
Okay, the next question we have is, what is a typical day like for you?
Oh, typical day like for me, well, it's pretty different every day. There are some days, for example, where I teach in the morning, and then because a good part of what I do is research. For example, I need to get about 50% of my salary comes from the grants that I write and obtain, and so usually a couple hours, definitely a couple hours a week, but typically at least an hour a day I'm spending with my lab group and my project manager working on the clinical trial that we have going on right now. I often will have different meetings either within my school with colleagues with whom I collaborate, or of course if they're faculty meetings, etc., or across campus. And also, not a typical day, but I could be traveling, depending on where, to either give a presentation, to go to ACSM for a board meeting, which we have twice a year, one time at the ACSM convention, the other time in November. Or I will tell you about today that I'm extremely excited about is that I might get to meet Michelle Obama because she's coming to speak about her Let's Move campaign here in Philadelphia. So after I'm finished with this webinar, I will be heading to the elementary school in North Philadelphia where she will be giving a presentation today. So the days are usually varied. Some days, I will tell you, I will be working on grants for a good number of hours, if not into the night, or writing manuscripts as well. Or, of course, mentoring my undergrads, master's students, or doctoral students. I tried to say that fast. Perhaps too fast, Heather?
That was great.
Okay.
The next question then we have are, what are entry-level salaries for the various careers in these fields?
Yeah, the entry-level salaries for nutrition are not the very best, but I've seen big ranges because it depends. For example, if you work government like a VA hospital, the entry-level salaries can be somewhere in the 30s, but I think the range is somewhere from like the mid-30s to like the mid-40s. So I've seen ranges as low as the mid-20s depending on the part of the country that you're in, but typically I would say the mid-30s to like mid or low 40s is about entry-level. Master's degrees may be a little bit higher.
The next question then we have, what kind of volunteer opportunities could I do now that would give me good exposure to the field?
I think there are several. One can be that if you can, and I know she had trouble finding preceptors, but if you can find people who are willing to take you under their wings, for example, friends of mine who are collegiate sports nutritionists who wouldn't mind if you shadowed them for a little bit, you know, even if it's twice a week during the summer, that would be really great. Also a good thing, and I love when undergrads work with me, whether I have money to pay them or not, is when they work with me in my research because that gives them at least an idea of research in the field of nutrition and exercise physiology. But I think that if you're able to, if you're thinking that you want to work with clients down the road, that working with someone who actually does work with any type of athlete, that would be a good thing. And perhaps even an outpatient dietitian in a hospital because their patients range from very, very ill to a more healthy client to perhaps disordered eating as well. So there are, I think, many opportunities. You can look at universities, you can look at hospitals, you can look at some community programs like even Head Start or WIC, and you can even, again, look at your professors who are doing some research, if that's sort of where you were thinking of going as well.
Great. The next question then we have is, I like working one-on-one with people. Would it be best to, or if I get into nutritional counseling, would it be best to get a counseling or psychology degree as well as nutrition?
I think that would be. I would tell you that it's not necessary because you do learn a bit about counseling in most dietetics programs. However, I think it would, again, give you another edge so that if you maybe minored in psychology and or got a master's in psychology and maybe minored in exercise phys or something like that, I think that would be actually helpful to you. And it's extremely helpful if you're going to work with individuals with disordered eating.
We have one more question, and so if any of you that have not had a chance to get yours asked, go ahead and raise your hand and get that typed in now. Otherwise, this will be our last question. And it's one that, Stella, we like to ask all of our speakers. How has your involvement in ACSM and your other professional organizations helped to advance your career?
Oh, my gosh. And, Heather, I don't say this just because you're from ACSM, but just amazingly so. So for American College of Sports Medicine, for example, I'll never forget my first conference was in Dallas, presenting my master's work in 1988, nervous as can be. I had a free communications presentation. I was sweating through my suit. It was still when we had slides. And I can just remember feeling so excited but also overwhelmed because here I was. I didn't really know many people. And I have, by the way, I have been an American College of Sports Medicine member since I was a senior in college, so as a senior university student. And since then, I don't think I've missed a meeting. Well, I don't want to say since then, but at least since my doctorate, certainly my master's perhaps, have not missed a meeting. I will tell you that my regional chapters were amazing for me, especially when maybe I couldn't afford to go to the national meeting early on, that when I was a master's student or PhD student. And just each year, the fact that I get to know more and more people has really helped because I have this cohort of individuals who are an email or a phone call away, who many have become great friends. and those who I don't know as well, I still feel comfortable enough contacting them. And having been president of New England chapter and now on the board of trustees for the national chapter, or the national chapter, the ACSM national, I can't even describe just, I have so many wonderful friendships there. And so in a general sense, it has helped advance my career. I'm associate editor of the Health and Fitness Journal, and I get wonderful comments about my article, Nutritionist View, from different people. And that's another thing, meeting people even who I've never met before over the internet, who will comment and say, I really appreciated that article that you wrote about X. My other organizations like the American Society for Nutrition and the American Dietetic Association, in particular SCAN, which is a dietetic practice group in the American Dietetic Association, sports cardiovascular and wellness nutritionists, have also provided me with that same sense of just belonging and feeling like I have this place where people understand what I do, and connections for either research or ideas or even helping other students, which I always love to do. And I tell my students that connecting with people is an email away for me to maybe help them, to introduce them to someone if they were thinking of going to graduate school at some place or the other. And I will say it, and I'm not saying this again because this is an ACSM event, but I will say that of all the organizations, the American College of Sports Medicine, for me, has been my most dedicated one. I belong to the Obesity Society, which I also really enjoy, and many others, but ACSM has been one that has been probably my most dearest to my heart. Most dear to my heart, I should say more appropriately.
Thank you for that. And during that, we did have another question come in.
Okay.
Christina says she received her BS in nutrition and is finishing her master's in exercise physiology this semester. She's applied to a dietetic internship for the year 2010-2011. And her goal is to work with elite athletes, specifically at the Olympic Training Center. She's spoken with a lot of sports dietitians about getting there, and they say it's hard to get into. What would be a good way to get off on the right foot so she can get there eventually? Specifically, what direction or what next steps should she take after her dietetic internship?
Okay, so after your dietetic internship, Christina, did you say, Heather? Christina, what's her name? Okay, Christina, yes. I would say after your dietetic internship, what you really want to try to do is obviously get yourself established. Now, it's going to take time, and sometimes it's a little frustrating, but give it time. So I will tell you that even now, when high schools ask me to speak to their teams, I mean, I'm not going to charge them, you know. Now, mind you, I do have a job that pays my salary, and I'm not, you know, it sounds as if initially you're going to want to maybe be on your own. But first I would say try to get your name known. So maybe perhaps you're going to start off working clinically. And that's actually not going to be so bad because you're going to get to see a lot of things there that may help you when you become a sports nutritionist at the Olympics. But in the meantime, you want to maybe either volunteer your time initially to speaking to schools, to, if you live near a university, getting your name known, perhaps lecturing if they allow guest lecturers and or perhaps a master's level person to teach a course as an adjunct person. And then also just become a part of SCAN, go to the SCAN conferences, and keep connected with people who are also involved in this. And again, you'll have my email after this that I can certainly introduce you to a couple of my friends who are already at the Olympic Training Center, and maybe you've already spoken with them, and also to some of my friends who are dietitians at universities and colleges. That might be also a great step for you, is to perhaps look toward the university setting too, because that's sort of not as elite, I guess, as Olympics, although many universities are, don't get me wrong, but that would be, I think, a great step for you. And particularly if you're if you end up directing the sports nutrition program, that would show your leadership capabilities as well. And then I don't know this, but if there's an opportunity for you to perhaps volunteer a little bit at the Olympic Training Center, maybe just a couple weeks. I don't know what they allow and don't allow. That might be a nice way to just at least get your name known to them as well. So those are quick ideas because I know we're limited with time, but just think of those kinds of things. Think about, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to think about every step that you take so particularly, but just be aware of the fact that there are things that we sometimes need to do where we'll get paid very little or we don't get paid at all, But again, people start to learn that, you know what, she's the real deal. She knows what she's talking about, and she's passionate about what she's talking about. And it may take some time, but you'll get there.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Volpe, for your willingness to share a lot of good information. And as was stated, the email that if those of you are on the phone think of additional questions or want to follow up, the email is svolpe@nursing.upenn.edu. Again, that's svolpe@nursing.upenn.edu.
Thank you so much.
As a reminder, ACSM offers these Career Spotlight webinars each month, so please be sure to visit the ACSM website at www.acsm.org for a list of future offerings. At this point, this concludes today's event, so we thank everyone for participating and hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, everyone. Heather? Okay, good.